When I'm engaged in the revision process, this usually involves my colleagues because, as I said, in psychology, we're almost always writing multiple authorship papers. So the revision will occur among a group of us, and it usually begins with a number of discussions in which we consider what paragraphs need to be refined or what sections need to be revised or deleted. Then I will, for instance, take a crack at it. I will try to tweak the manuscript in the manner that was discussed, and then it goes into the hands of another author. That author, the co-author, would then take a look at the manuscript and see if further revisions are needed. That the sciences are social enterprises. They require the collaboration of a lot of good thinkers and team players in order to bring a research project to closure and at that point publish something. Where the disciplines differ is in terms of their methodology, in terms of how they gather information. Many times the questions are the same. They're shared, they're universal, they're fundamental across disciplines. But the way in which those questions are answered can differ based on discipline. So the research methodology and the statistics applied by psychologists will be different than sociologists or biologists. And this leads us back to how scientists communicate in their writing, and ultimately that is the technical writing and the style requirements that are adhered to by that discipline. No one is born to naturally write technical writing. The fact is that it takes a great deal of practice, and this is where revise and resubmits become so important for the student. The idea that you can simply craft a single draft and that will be acceptable, at least in the sciences, is not going to be the case. Many revisions and resubmits are required for a finished piece. So essentially, a great deal, in terms of my own writing, a great deal of thought and incubation goes into the process before I even sit down at a keyboard. And by that I mean it could take days, weeks, occasionally months for me to think about an idea, how to cast that, how to consider the audience before I actually sit down at the keyboard and start to hammer out the first paragraph. For an author to revise his or her own work is a requirement in all good scientific writing, that is technical writing, but I would also say one of the most difficult requirements. The fact is that authors typically cherish their words, and every word written down becomes a part of something that the writer would like to see established forever. But we know that in reality, that's not the case. Others are going to look at the manuscript and have their own, perhaps better ideas as far as how the narrative should flow. And of course, editors have the final say. So if an editor says, look, I like your article, I like your work, but you're going to have to cut 15 or 20%. That's probably one of the most difficult tasks for an author to engage in, and yet that is a necessary requirement in order to get published. And let me mention one other aspect about publication. And even presenting one's scientific findings at a professional conference. My faculty, when I was a student, always told us that in order to be science, it needs to be public. And I took that very seriously. What that meant is, yes, one can go about devising an experiment, gathering data, and coming up with some very interesting results. But unless you get those results out there, that is public, in the form of a journal article or presentation at a conference, it isn't yet science because your colleagues have not had an opportunity to view your work, to evaluate your research, and to perhaps attempt a replication.